Freedom of Information Act. FOIA. Bzwatchdog News Network.
All right. Let me know when you're ready, Megan. Okay. All right. Hey, guys. I know you guys probably all missed me. But here I am again. And I'm going to say Megan has actually been working hard on getting me this Dickman video, so I don't know if any of you had any involvement in any of that. With the communications between Laura Lee, myself, and Megan, we still have a little technical difficulties with some things, but they are working on it, so I'm going to kind of leave the Dickman thing alone at this point, because she has been working for about 2 weeks on this thing between me and Laura Lee. So I wanted anybody involved in that and getting this handled, I want to thank you and appreciate that for getting this, because I just want y'all to be transparent, and we'll worry about the accountability once we see the video. However, there's some things that have come to light through other records over the past, and I forgot to mention it at the last city council meeting. I've been making my rounds when I put the records request in for an inventory of the evidence room at the police department. Come to find out, after a couple of pawn shops and a couple of firearms places I've been visiting and asking questions, Tony asked somebody if they wanted to buy those firearms. Now, at this point, I don't know if they've been sold. I haven't gone back and followed up, but I've been waiting for the Attorney General's decision on the weapons. Unfortunately, they don't want to release it because of the serial numbers. I don't need the serial number. Last two, last three. I want to know where those old weapons went when you guys approved the new weapons. Those weapons could be sold to a firearms license. That money could be recouped. It could be put back into a budget. There's a ton of money that's just out there that could be going back to proper things. I mean, it's having a hard enough time already with this water problem. So I really am calling for a full independent audit of that police department and evidence room. Something is obviously not kosher with that. And also, back to roads. We don't have roads fixed. We're having problems with the roads. All your tickets that you're writing, all those tickets that his department is writing, that's supposed to go towards funding your roads. That's it. It's not supposed to be funding anything else. So why aren't the roads fixed? Dominique Anderson, I know is my favorite friend here. She's not here tonight. She writes the most amount of tickets of over an average of 100 per month. Where's all that money going? It's not going towards the roads, because she's having to deal with that problem. So, how much more time is that, man? 30 seconds. Gee, that's a lot of time. So I'm really calling for an independent audit of his department, excluding that evidence room. I'm requesting somebody do it from outside the department, outside the city, an independent audit. That way there's no bias, there's no covering anything up. We really just need to see what's in that evidence room and what else is not being allocated. What funds could be, 2 seconds? 10, okay, well. Anyways, we should just look at it so that way we can figure out what's going on so we can get money back into her budget that she needs to get handled. So, thank you. I'll leave this up here so I can record the volume.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I won't be before you too long, but it's that time of the year again where we appoint various members to our boards, commissions, and committees. All the applications that we received through the deadline, I've provided you guys with that boards and commissions packet with all of those recommendation letters and applications that we received. All of the new appointees tonight, after they're approved, they'll be required to complete a series of trainings, complete their oath of office, and complete their oath of office before they're able to take their spots on those designated boards. So I'll go through quickly for the recommendations. For the airport board, liaison John Graham, he recommended Todd Kimbrell, Jim Morrison, and Charles Snyder. And then we have those three that are terms are expiring this year. For the building and standards, our liaison, Chris Carey, he recommended Margaret Bard, Larry Cole, and Paula Turner. For our EDC, or our Economic Development Corporation, our recommendations by our liaison Jessica True, Amy Fox, Kenny Nallen, and William Siddons III. For our Historic Preservation Commission, we have Teresa Arias, Susan Shoemake, and Kim Burgers. For our Housing Finance Corporation, our liaison Megan Henderson recommended Paul Baker, Noah Dansby, and Tiffany Rivas. We finally got that vacancy filled. For our Library Board of Trustees, our liaison Justin Dyer has recommended Sharon Fitch, Judy Fowler, and Roberta Skelton. For the Main Street Board, our liaison Tiffany Barron recommended Delwyn Hinkle, Jennifer Neal, and Deanna Vaughn. For the Parks Advisory Board, we have one recommendation that we received from our liaison Samantha Montez, and that was Chad Gray. So we do have currently one vacancy in that board, or on that board. For our Planning and Zoning Commission, we have Matthew Southern, Duncan Lloyd, and Lupe Mancha. And then finally, for our Zoning Board of Adjustments, we have Greg Goodwin, Charles Snyder, and Robert De Luna. I'll open for any questions about those recommendations.
If you go back one, please. Lupe Mancha already on school board, is that an issue?
No.
Council, any questions on the boards or appointments? I'll entertain a motion. Got a motion in a second.
Councilmember Fleming.
Aye.
Councilmember Lloyd.
Aye.
Councilmember Robinson. Councilmember Hernandez. Councilmember Jolly.
Okay, next item on the agenda, hold a public hearing, second reading, and deliberate and act on a proposed ordinance amending chapter 13 of utilities, article 13.200, rates and charges, section 13.207, rate schedule for water usage, and repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, containing a severability clause and providing for publication and effective date.
Yes, sir. Mayor and council, this has been, quite a while coming. It's anticipated, but that doesn't make it pleasant. As you know, we get an annual requirement every year from Aquilla Water Supply District that tells us what our rates are going to be with them for the coming year. That makes up about 70% of the cost of running our water system. They have gone up less than they were planning to because we asked them to pull back on the proposed increase. Because basically, if we're not able to fix some of these leaking water lines and increase the reliability of our service, we're going to continue pouring water out on the ground, which adds to the cost of running our system. So if we're giving the money to Aquilla, then we don't have it to spend to try to improve our system and limit those costs for us. Aquilla agreed in the short term. They're going to have to go up again next year, which they were going to do anyway, but they need us to be fiscally safe as well. So the result is that sort of the deal that we made with them, they were going to go up by $1 million, and we said, okay, we will raise our rates by the $1 million, but let us keep some of that money to do improvements with. So that's what they agreed to, and so our part of the bargain is to do the full increase because that's what is going to make next year's increase a modest stair step when it comes. Just to give a little background, back in July of 2024, we did a huge increase, approximately 70% overall, although residential users got a much lower increase than business users. We added an additional increase in November of 2024 because after that first increase, Aquilla came back with their first $1 million increase to us. which was not contemplated when we did the original increase. And so then we were scrambling to try to make up that difference. If you'll recall, that 15% increase did not in fact raise the whole rest of the money that we needed, but we just felt like people were already gasping under the burden of that new increase, and 15% was as much as we felt like we could do. The purpose of those increases was not just to pay Aquilla, but to close the fiscal gap that we had. Remember, in July of 2024, we were losing $1 million a year in the water fund because our rates were so behind the times. At this point, not only do we need to break even, we need to not lose money, obviously, but we also have to replenish those reserves, because if we don't have those reserves, the next time the wheels come off of something, we no longer have the cushion that we did a couple of years ago. Finally, we wanted to add some folks to come in and start replacing water lines. That added up to that cumulative 85% increase. Based on the usages prior to the increases, that would have netted us something like $2.5 million. Instead, we're seeing $1.5 million in added revenue. And remember, $1.4 million of that is just our increased cost with Aquilla. So in terms of answering all of those other needs, it didn't do that. So since then, we've had, as I said, that other increase from Aquilla. We've had a letter from Texas Water Development Board warning us that our cash reserves were low, and that we did not have adequate revenue to match the commitments that we made when we borrowed the money from Texas Water Development Board to do the water tower. So we were essentially in violation of the covenants in that loan agreement. And over that same period of time, we've had more leaks and service interruptions, which increased the concern from residents and businesses in terms of the quality of what they're paying for with these water rates. The proposed increase of 20% would allow us to take modest steps to address the water quality and try to make some repairs and get our fiscal house in order. And it would have the impact to residents of increasing the average residential water sewer trash bill from $119 to $135. Of that $119 to $135, water alone is $81 and $97. So $81 of 119 is water, the rest is sewer and trash. 97 of the 135 is water, the rest is sewer and trash. Questions for me?
Council, any questions?
Oh, I guess I should also share that we have shared all of these numbers with Texas Water Development Board, and they have let us know that if we put these things into place, they will consider us no longer in violation of our agreement. They think these steps are adequate to solve the problem.
So when we come back again and ask for more money in the district?
I think we wait and see what our annual requirement is from Aquilla next year. So it would be basically this time next year.
Council, any more questions? Okay, this is a public hearing, so we'll open it up to anyone in the audience that would like to address this agenda item.
So what caused us to go into violation of the work order, being that we were, say, in compliance the previous year would have been, I assume we would have been?
So there were two things. We're supposed to have enough cash reserves. We're supposed to have a certain amount of cash reserves that's there essentially to prove that we have the ability to service the debt. And our cash reserves were low. Number one. Number two, we're supposed to have enough revenue over expenses, so what in the private sector would be profit, to pay for the debt service plus an additional 10%. And we were operating at a loss. I mean, we were making the revenue, the debt service payments, but we were losing money year over year, so that was clearly not in keeping with that requirement.
And it would be a total increase of what, roughly 35% with the previous increase that we had in November?
So November of last, so a year ago we did 15%. This year we're doing proposing 20%.
Yes, ma'am.
What is the long-term plan? Now, increasing it every year is going to be problematic regardless. So what are the plan or what are the ideas for how to correct the issues?
Yeah, so the first thing that everyone the first thing that is important for everyone to understand in here is that the reason Aquilla has been going up so much lately is because they're contemplating a big improvement project to their physical plant, much of which directly benefits the city of Hillsboro in the form of pumps to supply us with water at the rate that we're required to have it from TCEQ. So the portion of the project that benefits only Hillsboro is significant. Obviously, that they're going to pass that on cost-wise directly to us. And then of the portion that benefits all of Aquilla, we are roughly 70% of their customer base. We use 70% of their water, so anything that benefits the system as a whole, we will be charged 70% of. So all in all, they're expecting our share of their project to be north of $30 million. Last year's increase, this year's increase, and the increase anticipated next year were meant to stair-step us into that $30 million debt service payment. So next year is expected to complete that 3-year process. And what they were thinking was, it's better to do it a little bit at a time than to hit you guys with a big, with a $3 million increase all at once. And their thinking was, if they do it a little bit at a time, then while they haven't started the big project yet, in the meantime, they can be doing like little parts of the project in advance. So that will knock down the total that they have to get financed when they do finally pull the trigger on the big project. So I said all that to say, the big increases from Aquilla, after next year, we do not anticipate any more big increases from Aquilla. In previous years, we've seen 3%. We went from, 5%, one year we got 10%, we were really mad. Then we got 3%, and then the next year it was 40%. We went, oh my gosh. And we didn't see it coming, and so we didn't have any way to prepare. The $1 million essentially that we're going up, this 20% essentially is $1 million. Half of that is going to go to Aquilla. The other half, we're going to run out and madly try to fix things. Council at the last meeting approved a $150,000 contract with Altex Utilities to replace the line from the college into town. From the college to the mall. Unfortunately, most of the projects are way more expensive than that because that line is in a field. You don't have to rip up a street. You don't have to replace any curb. You don't have to do a whole bunch of service connections to houses. It's just so much cheaper. The other projects that we've looked at doing are all over $600,000 a piece. So we're trying to figure that out. But theoretically, let's say Aquilla goes up $1.5 million next year, right? The other $500,000 from this year and $1 million for next year. We just wouldn't do those projects next year. We've got 1 year to try to maximize that $500,000, and then we have 1 more year of increases from Aquilla, and theoretically we'd be good. The challenge in all of that is that it does not leave us with money to fix our system. We have got to. We've got an estimate of cost from an engineering firm last year that estimated replacing all of the cast iron and asbestos cement pipes that are crumbly and brittle. And yesterday at the mall we had an outage because we were preparing a line that's leaking. We were just digging down to it and getting ready for it so that we could take it off service in a planned way the following night. By the time we got the ground opened up, it just burst. Like it's hard to, these pipes, some of them are just thin and crumbly, and when you touch it, you fix it here, and 2 feet down, it just does it again. Sorry guys, I'll try to wrap it up. $50 to $60 million to replace the things that need to be replaced. if we had 10 to replace the worst, the cost savings would begin to help us get the next 10. That's the thing. We've got to get that first big grant or that first big loan with loan forgiveness. I don't want to we could go now to USDA Rural Development and get a loan for $20 million. Assuming we could pay the debt service, which is another thing. But we could get approved. But there's no loan forgiveness. So that would tie up all of our capacity if we could even get that. We've got to get some loan forgiveness on that first big project because that's what's going to allow our dollars to go as far as they need to go. And in the meantime, if we're spending, $500,000 this year, if we, I'm hopeful that we'll be able to pull $500,000 together next year, even with Aquilla. I'm hopeful. We're not going to let a year go by where we don't make some progress, but it's going to take a big piece of outside dollars to really turn the tide. And I don't think we can, and I don't think we should try to raise rates enough to do $50 million worth of work. Like, I just don't think our community has that capacity. That's not a viable path forward. We've got to keep getting it out ourselves, until we are able to get some outside funding.
And this may be a question that I just need to do some research on, but you mentioned the $135 bill will be in the water sewer. Is that inclusive of commercial, or do they have their own rates?
They have their own rates. That's residential.
And so are their rates increasing also?
Yes.
But more?
Once we reconfigured everybody's rates, so back in the day, what we discovered is that residents were paying 60% of the revenues and using 40% of the water. So essentially, everybody's rates were too low. They weren't covering their cost, but commercials were even lower, and residents were covering that extra cost for the businesses. We redistributed all of the costs, and commercial rates went up considerably more than residential rates to balance it. So then commercial was paying their 60%, residents were paying their 40%. Once everything was in balance, from then it's been a straight percentage increase.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
Because with the economic development that we're planning, more commercial business will be coming our way, which will be burdening the system further. And it seems like they may need to pay more than their portion.
Well,
for
and
revenue generation they're getting.
yes, ma'am. And so a few things to understand. Adding users to the system isn't stressing our infrastructure more.
Maybe the water consumption.
It's not stressing our infrastructure more. And we are paying for the water that we don't sell because we have to pay Aquilla for all the water that we have the right to, whether we use it or not. So if we have more people paying into the system, that's actually going to lower the cost for everybody else. Because right now we're all sharing the cost of the water we're not selling.
Yeah. I didn't know that.
Yes. It is way more complicated than
I can hear that.
it feels like it needs to be, right? And so yes, thank you for your questions, because it's until you dig into it, you go, oh, well, why don't you just X, Y, Z?
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
So I want to thank you guys for participating. These questions need to be asked because those were questions I was going to bring up. So I'm glad you guys did that. You guys keep increasing the stuff, but here's the concern that I have, and I don't know if they have the same concern. We're also spending in other places we shouldn't be spending. We should be looking at cutting expenses to shift that money where you need it for this water issue, because this is a big issue. You got the other issues, but we keep spending. We keep buying property. Those loans got to be paid. We're buying brand new police vehicles. That's money we're going to have to pay on. Why aren't we shifting that money and sacrificing a little bit of that stuff to shift it this way? If you say $500,000 isn't enough to do an old project, why do we keep spending?
So that's a good question. The first thing that people need to understand is that the city has two main buckets of money. We've got water and sewer revenues, and the water and sewer revenues pay for water and sewer services. closed system. We cannot take money out of water and sewer payments. People say, oh, you must be spending all that money on, fixing old Brandon Road or whatever. Nope, water and sewer payments stay in water and sewer. That is all that they do. General fund does not go into water and sewer. General fund pays for public safety, street repair, parks, dog catching, administration, everything else. If we had more money than we needed over here, we would lower taxes, because that is also coming out of our citizens, right? Like, whether it's tax payments or water payments, either way, it is the same people bearing the burden of these costs. So we're not gonna cut here and put it over here. If we were able to keep our costs lower over here, we would just reduce those forms of revenue. The challenge is, we don't think we are spending stupid, unnecessary money over here in the general fund. Looking at our expenses for public safety, we have some pretty embarrassing fleet needs. We've got some vehicles. It's not about the age of the vehicle, it's about how many miles you have on those vehicles, and they run all the time. Having twice as many vehicles, let's say you've got 12 vehicles that each run 12 hours a day. You say, oh, well, why don't you just have 6 vehicles and run them 24 hours a day? Well, the answer is that's just as many. You're going through vehicles twice as fast. It's just as much use. It's just as much expense. And the vehicles really don't like to run 24 hours a day. You'll get better results by having more vehicles and using them half as much.
I don't mean to get off topic, but when
Yes.
they're sitting out there running for 2 hours while somebody's inside, they could be cut off and they wouldn't be running.
That is a question that I
Got
have
plenty of
asked.
video of that, so.
That is a question that I have asked over and over again. It is distressing to me to see vehicles running, and the answer is there's a ton of equipment in there that by the time you power all the equipment off, and then you get a call and you have to run out there and power all the equipment back on again, you're adding literal minutes to the response time. And in terms of looking at the results of life and death situations, the difference between 4 minutes versus 6 minutes versus 8 minutes, it's pretty substantial. So we do try to separate vehicles that could be responding to a call versus, okay, I'm done responding to calls. There are other people that are in those positions right now. I'm gonna go in and work on reports. My vehicle's going off. But you're always gonna have some vehicles running because that's a function of the officer being in a position to respond. It makes me crazy. It makes me absolutely crazy. I wish that were not the answer, but that is the answer. And we are going through, we had a pretty bare bones budget this year. We did not, all department wish lists were canceled. There was no Christmas for anybody. We said, whatever you want, you're gonna have to wait. We're just focusing on delivering essential services with this year's budget, and we stand by that. Anything else?
Anybody else? Any other questions?
Yeah, I just got one more. What would you say were some of the causes that caused the budget to fall so short?
In water and sewer, I think that we were not honestly doing the financial analysis of what it actually cost us to run the system. And I think that we had failed to raise rates for decades, literally decades, because we don't want to. People on the street have the idea, and I'm not saying but every once in a while you run into somebody that has the idea that raising rates is easy for city employees, or that in some way it benefits city employees to raise these rates, and that is not the case. We live here, we pay the rates, our relatives, our friends live here, they pay the rates, and particularly in the utility billing department, our people love our customers. We don't want to look at those people and hear them tell us that they're struggling to pay those water bills. We, for a long time, tried to keep the water bills low because we did not want to do this to people, and we did not want to endure the difficulty of the process. And unfortunately, we should have done it gradually a long time ago. If we had raised the rates 5%, every once in a while, and done some projects with that money to replace water lines, we wouldn't be in the situation that we're in. But as it is, every year the water lines are worse. Like it's gonna take more than 1 or 2 projects to just break even in terms of how bad it is. They're going from D- to F faster than we can pick one and make it an A. So now that we're here, I mean, I think 20, 30 years ago, and it's real easy for me to stand here, and I said this can make this brief. It's really easy for me to stand here and say, oh man, those people back then should have done that thing. They were dealing with stuff too. I mean, you go back and you look, and you find all kinds of crises that were happening. Like, they weren't twiddling their thumbs, but we missed the opportunity to do this gradually, and it has bit us in a big way.
Yeah, so is there something to take into consideration, doing like a 3 to 5% yearly increase? That way, like, it's not going to hit everybody as hard.
Yes.
And we assume we keep up with inflation at a certain rate.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, every year, if we would just pass on the increase we got from Aquilla. I mean, I said 2 years, we had 5%, we had 10%, we had 3%. We didn't pass those on. Year after year after year after year. If we were just every year, just keep up with the cost. And now we have the challenge of correcting all of that past stuff, but I think we're clear on what we need to do going forward. We just have this big snowball we got to deal with.
Okay, any more questions? Okay, we'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
Second.
Motion and a second.
Councilmember Henry. Councilmember Lloyd. Councilmember Robinson.
No.
Councilmember Hernandez. Councilmember Dodd.
Fair enough.
Okay, next item on the agenda, hold a public hearing first reading and deliberate on an ordinance accepting the recommendations of the Planning and Zoning Commission to amend the terms of the 2007 zoning ordinance known as ordinance number 2007-01-01, last amended by O 2025-07-11. Whereby the purpose is to amend section 4.30B.6 by amending the sign regulations in the alcohol redevelopment overlay district.
Mayor and council, I will try to do a better job of keeping it brief. Okay, we're basically done with both of these projects. The Park Drive, Brandon Road, Walnut, and Church Street street and infrastructure project is near completion. We had a walkthrough last week. There's some concrete work that's still being completed. There are texture pads at some of the corners where people cross the street. There's some areas where the pavement is being redone. There are some valves that are, the valve stems are too close to the wall of the little area where you go in there, so we're having them reset so that they're more easily worked. So basically minor stuff, but the overall project is complete. The industrial water tower has been complete. We continue to have some administrative stuff that we're working through in terms of closeout, but in terms of building infrastructure, it's done, so I'm going to remove it from this report. You won't see it next month. Skipping that, and let's just talk about water. In terms of what we're going to try to get done this year, we talked a little bit last month about, or last meeting, about TxDOT's project. There is a TxDOT water line component that they will pay for because the water line was there prior to them having a highway. The remaining amount that's us is a little bit north of $600,000. We are working through with our engineers to confirm that amount and make sure that that includes everything. TxDOT is doing a block of Franklin and a block of Covington streets. So in terms of bang for the buck for City of Hillsboro, it's still a very good project. And we have a little bit more time than we thought. So we ought to be able to either queue this up for next fiscal year or do a portion of it in this fiscal year and a portion of it in next fiscal year. So that's going to go pretty well. I think what we're looking at is these we talked about the College to the Tower. Smith and Sycamore, both of those are north of $600,000. So what we've asked staff to do is go back and find us some more cheap projects. There's a line out from between the industrial park and the golf course that's infield, and we have problems out there all the time that leak a lot of water. There's a line that goes north of Old Brandon Road, east of the interstate, back through a field that we lose a lot of water. If we can, just round up some cheaper projects where we don't have to go through and repair streets and put in a lot of connections, we may be able to get a little bit more bang for our buck. And that's what we're going to be looking at, is how can we get the absolute most ground we can get this year. And we'll be in contact with contractors and basically trying to reverse engineer our way into as much repair as we can this year. We will be replacing the line in Hummingbird using in-house forces, and are looking for more locations throughout town where we can do that. Hummingbird is next because we want to be able to do that street. We've done the sewer line already, but we will, once we've got we're looking at financing right now for a backhoe for this second water crew that will be doing line replacements. Once we've got all that equipment in place, then we can have a schedule of the line replacements that they'll be able to self-perform. Goal number 6, deliver essential services. The facilities master plan. Those architects were in town yesterday. They're looking at city facilities and trying to determine where we can come up with some efficiencies and where we may be able to let go of property that we don't need. Street maintenance. We're working on utility cuts still while the weather is good. We've talked about police and fire, where we're still, we've got a lot of departmental policies that we're going through and making sure that our staffing needs are being met. We have certainly fewer staff members in those departments than ideal, but we're sort of reconfiguring and making sure that we've got adequate coverage with the budget realities just being what they are. Water, we're working through getting that app explained to the public so that people know they can monitor their water usage in real time and get alerts to their phone if they have a leak, stuff like that. We can't help it that the water is expensive, but we don't want to sell people water that they don't really want to be using. So if we can help people find when they've got a leak, that's to their advantage and to ours. Continue working on Wallace Park, and solid waste keeps trucking along. No pun intended. So economic development, we continue to work projects, the dispatch, freeze pop, and treasure hunt. Retail coach continues to work their prospects. Main Street continues to support downtown businesses. We've got a lot of cool stuff going on downtown. Looking at the outlet mall, phase 1, the pad sites and retained buildings. Bath and Body Works, the renovation of their new space is well underway. We had the tear down of one of the big mall signs on Friday of last week, so you guys probably saw photographs of that. It was fun. Chili's construction has begun, and Express and Chick-fil-A are both supposed to start pretty soon. Waffle House is still in the plating permitting stage, and then since you guys approved the contract for the exterior renovations on what we will always affectionately know as the Mallmageddon building, that work will get started pretty soon. Phase 2 is going to be the southern portion of the mall, and we're not really, we haven't really started teeing that up yet, but it's coming, so we need to start thinking about that process. And I'll just remind you, this is kind of a general idea of what the blow up is sort of supposed to look like. Library continues to do their work on the doors and operate their regular programming. The ESL class that we were able to get funded with grant dollars, we opened it up and it was full within a day, 24 hours. Justin, how many more classes do you think we could fill if we had the staff?
So I would usually add 2 or 3 more classes in the spring.
Yeah. Fantastic. This is a huge service that there was a ton of demand, and the library is really stepped up. And then in Parks and Rec, we've got basketball starting, and we continue to have baseball, softball tournaments every weekend through December. staff updates and community events. We're just filling open positions as we have the ability to do so now that we're in the new fiscal year. We did enjoy a fantastic Autumn Fest event, and there was another Oktoberfest event that was not put on by the city, but was put on by a business in our downtown. Both of those went really well. Coming up, we have Halloween in Hillsboro, October 24th, and the last night of music at the Yard, October 25th, and that will be Mike Morgan. And then on October 31st, Public Safety will do their trick-or-treating for kids at Historic City Hall.
Maybe, this past weekend, we came out, and, I'm sure it came up, and it was like, oh my God, I mean, it's just like,
People are everywhere.
I mean, it was really nice.
Yes, ma'am.
Two big weekends.
Yeah, and there are new businesses open that I haven't even been able to get to them all yet, which is a fun problem to have.
Yes, okay, I have no further business.
Freedom of Information Act. FOIA. Watchdog News Network. Bzwatchdog.